when you're feeling down and like your world's moving slow, just remember your race. It moves at your pace when marching towards your goals. And brighter than the stars. Don't take impossible. Nothing is impossible. You're brighter than the stars. An angel, 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 soaring like an eagle, eagle, eagle. Nothing is impossible. Don't take impossible. You're brighter than the stars.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Talking with 3D. I am your host, Eric Darrell Dixon, right here on Plush Work TV. We are so excited today. We have a very exciting show. We have Mr. Ronald J. Mccray is with us, and we are going to be talking about men overcoming sexual abuse. I'm so excited to do this show because this is a topic that we rarely talk about. You know, we are kicking off our Men's Month. I am celebrating men in the month of June. And I think it's very important that we celebrate our men, we uplift our men, and that we make sure that every man is represented, regardless of who you are, what color you are, how old you are. We are here to represent men. We are here to make sure that we're accountable for each other. So I am so excited to do Talking with 3D, this series that we are just going to be celebrating our men. And it's not to take away from men, from women, but it is Father's Day month. And I want to celebrate our men. I want you to go out there also for Father's Day and pack these restaurants, just like we do for our mothers. We love you, our mothers. But we want to make sure that our men are represented and we support each other in everything that we do. But today it may be a sensitive subject, and we want to make sure that everyone feels okay watching the show because of that. But it's a learning. It's about learning. And Talking with 3D is real talk for real people, and we are here to discuss men overcoming sexual abuse. And sexual abuse can happen in 1 in 6 men are sexually abused or attacked. Unwanted sexual contact involving force or threats. Males are less likely to discuss it. Only 16% have documented sexual abuse. So also, a lot of the symptoms that come from sexual abuse, PTS, alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide thoughts and threats, problems in intimate relationships, and also unachievable at school. So there's so many other symptoms that we do go through, that men go through, that men don't want to talk about. But today, we are going to have that discussion, and we hope that we touch at least one person. And we make sure that we reach out, especially to our young boys, because it starts there. And we have to be able to educate them to be able to speak. But we also have to educate each other to hear. Because if we don't hear what our children are saying, our young boys and our young girls, if we don't educate ourselves what they are saying, they're going to go through a life of trauma. So sexual abuse is something that's very, it's something that it goes on every single day. Every single day, and it's a scary thought to think. And it doesn't always have to be something that is penetration or touch. It's a fact that a threat or what someone says to you. So we have to know what sexual abuse is and how we're able to educate ourselves and educate our children. So again, it's a sensitive subject, but it's something that we have to talk about today. We're going to take a quick break, and the next person that's going to be here on Talking with 3D is going to be Mr. Ronald J. Mccray. So don't go anywhere. Go get a snack. Come right back, because this is going to be a great show on Talking with 3D.
Keep showing up. If no one invests in you, invest in yourself. If no one believes in you, believe in yourself. Even if you don't see the results right away, keep showing up until you do see the results. Even if you don't see the results for a very, very long time, keep showing up. What if the results don't come? They're not going to come if you quit. Keep showing up. I'm tired. Keep showing up. I don't feel like it. Keep showing up. I can't see any results. Keep showing up. I don't know where to start. Just start. Do something. Take that first step. Every step you take.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back once again. I am here with my guest, Ronald J. Mccray. You are watching Talking with 3D right here on Plush Work TV. Mr. Mccray, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me here on Talking with 3D.
I'm good, Derek. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very humbled and just grateful for the opportunity to sit and speak with you.
You know, I was scrolling through, we've never met. We've talked on the phone once, but we've never met. But I was scrolling through Instagram and your name popped up. We don't even follow each other, but your name popped up. And I always say God does things for a reason. He always does things for a reason. And your name popped up and I stopped and I just started scrolling through, you know, just your pictures and everything. And I saw everything that you've done, what you've accomplished in life and your message that you're trying to put out to men, to young people, to the world, to educate people. And it wasn't forceful. It was something that was very, very intriguing. And I was so interested in wanting to know who you were. And I thought it was very important that the world knows who you are. So I want to thank you so much for saying yes and coming on the show. I do want to tell my audience a little bit about you. Ronald J. Mccray, he's an international speaker, best-selling author of Is God Who He Says He Is, and contributing author of the best-selling Echoes, Stories of Male Survivors Overcoming Sexual Trauma. As a survivor and advocate himself, he is committed to helping others walk into their identity and their purpose. Ronald is a minister of the gospel and international Christian recording artist. His heart is to see people's lives restored and use his writing, his speaking, and music to bring hope and healing to those who need it the most. Among all his accomplishments in global media appearances, he prides himself on being a husband to his wife Fatima and a father to their son Alexander. So again, welcome, Minister Ronald Mccray.
Ron is perfectly fine. But thank you.
So Ron, I started off and I told our audience about overcoming sexual abuse and sexual trauma, and you as a survivor and an advocate yourself. You know, it's a topic that is hard to speak about. And me, myself, being a survivor, and we do call ourselves survivors of sexual abuse. You know, I always thought it was so odd when I heard people waiting so far in life to tell their story about how they've been sexually abused. You know, we saw the Bill Cosby's and the Matt Lowry's and all those in the Me Too movement, and all of a sudden these people would pop up and something that happened 20 years ago. And I would get so angry that they would wait so long. But then I realized I never told a soul. I never told anyone of what I went through because we suppress those feelings. So when you say that overcoming sexual trauma, being a survivor and an advocate, what does that mean for you? That people can say, wow, this is what this person went through and how I can be a survivor.
Sure. So I'll start with responding to the question about what it means to be an overcomer of sexual trauma. I've heard different terms to describe individuals who have experienced sexual trauma. As you've mentioned, I've heard of survivor, and I would describe myself in that way as well. I think more comfortably, what describes me is that I identify myself as an overcomer of the sexual trauma. Yes, I did survive some pretty, terrible experiences from rape, starting at the age of maybe 8 years old, somewhere between the ages of 7 and 9. But that was not the last time I experienced rape by a person of the same sex, having experienced molestation and incest by a male relative who took advantage of me. He was an older male relative. And so having survived those experiences, and even sexual harassment, both verbally and physically, although I survived, I had to make a decision to thrive and not allow my life to be defined by the effects of the trauma. And so what it means to me to be an overcomer is every day that I get up in the morning and put my feet to the ground and live this life, that I make a decision about Ronald, that I control the narrative about who I am, that, again, the effects of the trauma does not define me, but I can take the power, the reins back into my own hands. I can take my voice back, and I can exist and introduce myself to the world in the way that I desire. And so as it relates to, I'm sorry, the first part of the question was what it means to be an overcomer of sexual trauma. And then the second part was?
Then the second part was what does it look like to help people become survivors?
Sure. So being an advocate of survivors and other overcomers is to advocate for people's healing. And so the major reason why I even share my story is to tell people that there is hope. I know, like when you were talking about the number of different effects of the sexual trauma, I was like, goodness gracious, like that described very well a lot of how my life was affected. The drunkenness, the promiscuity, the difficulty in intimacy in relationships, and lack of trust when it came to men, and just a myriad of other things as well. And so when I tell my story, it's a means of me advocating and giving men back their voice to say, what happened to you was not your fault. You were not responsible for those things. You have every right to speak up and tell someone what happened to you. You don't have to live with this secret. As many of us that were abused were told that you have to keep this to yourself. And it had become like just a damning secret that just ate away at us inside. But using your voice is taking back your power to let men know that, and women know that you can go to therapy. Even when it comes to your relationship with God, God and therapy don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can have both. And so I endeavor to be a resource for men, to be a safe space. I cannot tell you the number of times that men have come to me well in age, some of which like in their 60s, have inboxed me and said, hey, I heard your story and it really touched me. And, this is the first time that I'm telling someone, but I was sexually abused too. If you like, this was their way of saying me too. And mind you, these men are like in their 60s and their 70s. I can only imagine how this secret may have impacted their lives for so long. And so I, again, just endeavor to be a resource and to connect people with the resources to help them on their journey to wholeness. And I'll end by saying this. There's a very thought-provoking quote that a friend of mine often uses, and he says, healing is the journey, wholeness is the destination. I want to help men to heal on their journey to wholeness.
Wow, healing. Okay, and talking about this, it hits so many different emotions, because one thing, like you said, that I think that men are so afraid to express the feelings that they go through. I went through a period, again, being very transparent, being sexually abused. You go through this period of hatred. And I remember that I would create false relationships with other men to intentionally try to hurt them back for what one person did to me. I didn't understand it at that time, what I was doing. But I knew that someone had hurt me and I was trying to hurt them back. So I think that we have to understand, and we, again, sharing these stories, men can, say, wow, that's maybe something that I was suppressing, and something that is why I do certain things, why I don't have relationships with certain people. Most of my closest friends were always females because I felt more secure. I felt safe. I didn't have a lot of male friends because of the fact that relationship I couldn't trust. But again, I didn't understand why that was. So Ron, is that something that we do? We suppress all that, so therefore we're not understanding what these feelings are?
Absolutely. I experienced that myself. And as you were talking about how you had, like your friend groups were more so female, it was the same for me too. And I don't think I ever had a reason for it other than, I feel like I connect more with the females. But
right.
You saying that actually gave me language and it makes sense that the reason why I was not as close to men or boys my age is because of the distrust, the trust that was broken in the relation in relation to the same sex. And so I know I suppressed thoughts. I know many people who've experienced sexual trauma personally who have suppressed thoughts and refuse to deal with it. But the thing about trauma is if we don't deal with it, it deals with us.
And deals with us, right?
We don't even realize, like, going on 35 next month, I still don't fully understand in totality the ways in which sexual trauma affects my life. But as I grow and I enter into new relationships, even within the context of marriage, becoming a father, platonic friendships, just all different types of relationships, you come into a greater awareness of how I would describe what feels like a fracture that hasn't fully healed. Like, I have a bandage around it, but sometimes it still aches. And sometimes if the wind blows too cold, it will cause some pain in that bone to remind me that there's still a fracture there.
Right. How dangerous is that? How dangerous is that for us to really suppress those feelings and not deal with them? And like you say, not go to therapy, not have someone to talk to, and especially men. I feel like a lot of times that women have that freedom to speak to other women, to go to therapy, go to church. We don't, men, we're not going to do that. So how dangerous is that and again, we're talking about men right now. How dangerous is that?
I think it's very dangerous. And I will go back to the statistic that you referenced of how 1 in 6 boys will experience unwanted sexual, abuse or sexual advancement or what have you by the age of 18. But the number is actually lower than that because that's only what's reported. And we know that men by and large do not report, their sexually traumatic experiences, because a lot of times when these encounters or experiences take place as youth, boys don't realize what happened. It sometimes I think, from the research that I've done, is that it can take up to 25 years for a man to come into an understanding of, the sexual traumatic experience and possibly articulate it, to tell someone. And so for a person that comes into an understanding of the sexual trauma, the reason why it can be so dangerous is because of how it affects our lives, of how it prevents us from fully living. Like, we can appear as fine to the world with the smile, and
Right.
we can do ourselves up really well, but internally we can be dying. And that's how a lot of men describe, that pain. Like, there's a pain inside of them that just continues to ache, and it drives them to do different things. It, drives some to drunkenness, and, it drives some to do certain behaviors that bring harm to others and cause them to be behind bars or under the dirt. And so when we think about the ways in which our men are affected by the sexual trauma, like by not dealing with it, I think that should be a red alarm for everyone. It should cause us to take a bit more attentiveness or notice to our young boys, to be a bit more mindful of the surroundings that we allow them to be in. And, a lot of times we think of stranger danger, but actually sexual abuse doesn't often happen by strangers. It's by the close relative that knows you. It's by the pastor. It's by the youth leader. The doctor. And so a lot of these people, who were broken themselves when they were younger, they grow up to be politicians, they grow up to be doctors, and, into other spheres of our society. And so we have to, and the care that we need to give to men starts when they're boys, starts when they're, being raised at home. So I would just say, if we want to prevent our boys and men from living self-destructive lives, then we have to address the trauma early on as possible.
Right. And what also we need to discuss, Ron, is something that you said that's just so important, is that a lot of sexual abuse, sexual advances, sexual attacks don't happen, sexual threats don't happen by strangers. It happens right in the home. Right. It happens with people that we are familiar with. And at times in families, we want to say, so-and-so wouldn't have done that. I don't believe you. You're making this up. And that's where we're wrong, by not listening to that child.
Right.
And that's why a lot of our children are so afraid of discussing and afraid of expressing their feelings, because they were touched in a wrong way. Something was said to them in a wrong way. So, but it's very important for our listeners that are listening today, when, a lot of this stuff happens within your four walls. And you have to be aware when your child, all of a sudden, it could be a straight A student, now all of a sudden is acting up and running away from home, hanging out with the wrong people. What's going on in the home?
Right.
And you have to listen to that child. You wrote the book, Is God Who He Says He Is? By getting the book, what do we get out of reading that book? It is the echoes, stories of male survivors overcoming sexual trauma. So by reading that book, is it stories that have been told? Is it, and what will men and women get something out of this book?
I think anyone who, regardless of how you relate to the topic of sexual trauma, whether you were, sexually victimized yourself, maybe you have a relative who experienced it and you want to know how to support them, if you want to know more about resources and how to, get these resources into their hands, or if you are just completely oblivious to the fact that sexual trauma happens to boys and men, this book really covers so much ground. And yes, there are probably about 15 authors, most of which identify themselves. Some are anonymous, but you get the real, authentic, raw experiences of men who have experienced sexual trauma. It is not an easy read. The details can be difficult. But for the man who is wondering if there's new life after trauma, this book is for you. For the person who's wondering, have I been alone all my life, and isolated on this rock by myself, and no one else has happened, this has happened to no one else. Reading this book will open your eyes to the reality that you are not alone. It will allow you the ability to relate to people. Reading the book, for me, some of the authors I had not met, but it was like they were telling my life in many ways. And so that's a way that you can connect with it, because someone else has shared your lived experiences. Some stories are very candid in the fact that they are still very much processing the trauma and are living through the effects of it and haven't reached the point of identifying as an overcomer, but many of them do. Many of them speak to their lives now, and as a means of giving hope to men, again, to begin the journey of healing in pursuit of wholeness, because that's the road that we are all on, regardless of what walk of life we come from. All of us are on this journey. And so if you're looking for the how to start the journey, read the book. If you're looking for, what can wholeness look like, read the book.
And again, this is a best-selling contribution author of best-selling Echoes, the stories of male survivors overcoming sexual trauma. And I liked when you said the details are hard to read, but people need to understand the details are hard to live. So we have to make sure, again, that this information, we share it. It's hard to talk about it. It's hard for me to talk about it now. I'm holding back a lot of stuff right now, but it's hard to talk about because of the fact that, men that have experienced this, you don't want, that's what's wrong with him. That's what happened to him. So, but we have to be able to start having these dialogues. It breaks my heart to see, young boys, young girls that have gone through this, and we say we don't talk about this in the house. Right. We don't discuss this. Ron, what is it? How do you encourage, especially our men, to seek therapy and to seek the guidance of, if they don't go to church, somebody spiritually in their family or something? How do you encourage them about therapy?
My hope is to help every man to see their value. One thing that happens as a result of sexual trauma is that it causes one to feel like they don't have value, like they're tarnished, like they're damaged. But even in the most broken of state or conditions, we are still valuable and worth living. I want men to know that your life is worth living. Like, you deserve to live, you deserve to heal, you deserve to give yourself the permission to heal. Like, it's one thing to know that you can heal, but it's a totally different thing or conversation when you give yourself permission and open yourself up to the possibility of healing. And so for someone who may not be spiritual, your life, all of our lives have value, and you healing and making the steps toward wholeness allows you to live a better life for you first. If you're married, it allows you to be a better spouse. If you have children, it allows you to be a better parent. It allows you to be more healthy. It allows you to have a better outlook for the future that says, my life won't always be like this. I won't always, wrestle with this, maybe it's the anger that you feel. And mind you, it's okay to be angry. And in therapy, they will allow you to feel your feelings and to talk you through them. You don't have to be afraid of, and just candidly speaking, although I'm a man of faith, I was angry with God. I was like, well, where were you? Why you're so good? Why did you allow such a horrific thing to happen to a 7-year-old and having to wrestle through that. And I just implore men again to see that they're worth living, they're worth healing, and doing the hard work of healing. Like, what happened to us was not our fault.
Right.
We had no part in that. But as it relates to taking the reins of our lives and making changes and turning things around, that falls in our laps. And I just want men to know that there are resources to help you to take that journey.
Wow. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. Listen, when we come back, we're going to be talking about Mr. Mccray's second book. It's called "Is God Who He Says He Is?" It's talking about the objective isn't being straight, the objective is being holy. Mccray lived in his earlier life, in his younger age, as a homosexual man. And since then, he has given his life over to Christ. He is now married, and he believes that he has changed for the better of what God has done through his life. And we want to talk about that so people can understand more about what you choose to do with your life and allowing God to make changes in your life. So we'll be right back, and don't go anywhere. This is Real Talk for Real People. You are watching Talking with 3D.
You wanted to give up. You can't give up. Not for what someone did to you. You can't allow them to take your power. You have to live your life. You have to have a voice, and you have to tell your story. There's a little boy and a little girl that's depending on you, on us. So you have to keep smiling and know that you're not to blame. So again, don't give in. You just keep being you. Keep moving forward. Believe in yourself, because we believe in you. Trust the process. Keep smiling. Hold on.
And ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are back. You're watching Talking with 3D right here on Plush Work TV. I have Mr. Ronald J. Mccray right here with me, and we are just talking about the overcoming sexual abuse. Also, we're talking now about his other book, Is God Who He Says He Is? And Mr. Mccray, at a younger age, is living a homosexual life and finding God and understanding his purpose in life. Is now a married man. He has a child, and his life for him has changed for the better. So I want to talk about that, Ron, because a lot of people will think once you're gay, you're always gay. That's the stigma that people have. How do you change your life? If it's overnight, if it's a journey, how do you change your life? And what does that mean? So reading that book, Is God Who He Says He Is? What was the struggles and what did you have to live with, Ron, for yourself?
Sure. So Is God Who He Says He is my autobiography, and it invites you into a very sincere, honest look into the life of someone who wrestles with same-sex attraction and faith. And, I'm very candid, as we've talked about previously, about my experiences of sexual assault. I'm very clear in the book that sexual assault did not make me gay, that sexual assault affects people in many different ways. What I do say, however, is that it certainly introduced ideas about sex with persons of the same sex. And just, I know this is real talk, so I can talk candidly.
Yes.
During my first experience of sexual abuse, although I was afraid, I felt like a sense of security, because the relative who was present in the room represented, or should have represented, trust and safety. And so my body began to respond. At a very young age, during these experiences, I developed an erection. And a lot of men will describe this as like their bodies betraying them, like such a, a traumatic experience that affects men, in such negative ways, caused my body to respond sexually because, that sexuality or, sexuality was awakened before its time. And so my first point of sexual reference was with an older male teenager. And so I was confused for a long time. Like, does this mean I'm gay? Because people were labeling me, they were calling me fag, they were calling me sissy and telling me that I was gay. But I didn't have an understanding of what it meant to be gay, to come to the conclusion that this is my identity as a child. But those labels followed me in school. Those labels followed me into at family reunions, even in my own household. And so again, me connecting with females often, I thought, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I am gay. And so I kept these secrets internally for years. I never told anybody until I met my first, gay best friend in the 7th grade. And to this day, he and I are still friends. He coined the term "the life" for the first time. And he would talk just very openly about like his encounters and relationships with men. And it sparked a curiosity because I already had these sexual desires inside of me. And I thought maybe that's the solution to what I'm feeling inside. But again, being raised in the church, all I heard about over the pulpit was, if you're gay, you're an abomination, you're going to hell.
You're going to hell, it's a sin. Right.
But I never heard anybody say, there is hope for new life for a person who identifies as gay, or that change is possible. Never heard any of that. And so I'm giving the book away. I'm going to do my best not to give it away too much. And so, going into, the gay community, I really immersed myself in gay culture. And I have to say that there's a difference between the Black gay culture and experience versus, those of our friends who are white. There's differences. And so my introduction into it was very much of, going into the clubs and the bars and seeing guys hooking up and, getting it on in the cars and going to strip clubs. And I'm, too young to get in, but I somehow found my way in, and my eyes were just open to a new world. I'm thinking like this is it. And I had the acceptance and the love from the gay community. My family, some of my family turned their backs to me. I wasn't welcomed at certain relatives' homes anymore. And so I was bruised. I was like hurting, but the gay community opened its arms to me. And so being so young and looking for safety, I ran into the arms of those who were willing to take me in. And so, just to kind of, again, not to give the whole story away, I remember very clearly many points in relationships with my boyfriends. Like I remember laying in the bed with one of my boyfriends, and I was like, I don't feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I felt a conflict between my sexual feelings and a conflict with my faith. And we would talk about it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. And
let me ask you, when to right there, did you believe in, say, gay relationships as far as, living together, gay marriage? And I don't know if gay marriage was really around at the time, because gay marriage is something practically new. But did you believe in that, I could live happily ever after with this person? Or is that where the conflict would come in?
I didn't think that, just from my experience and being raised in the church, there was only but so far I was willing to go. And marriage was just too far for me. I'm like, nope, can't do that. We can do it all night long till the cows come home, but marriage, I just couldn't do it. I'm, just being honest. And one of my boyfriends, when I was probably 17, he asked me, he said, if I proposed to you, would you marry me? And I just froze like a deer in headlights. And I was like, I don't know how to respond because, you know, I loved him, but there was this conviction knocking at the door of my heart that I could not escape. And so I just found myself continually like feeling like empty, like there was a void in my heart. And no matter how much I did, no matter who I did, I still felt that emptiness, like something was missing in my life. And the clubs, the parties, the relationships, the sex, all of it like started to feel meaningless at some point. It felt like I was just like coasting through life. And I was very, you know, I battled a lot with suicidal ideation, I battled a lot with depression. And I just felt like my idea about love was giving my body away. And so, but the more that I gave and gave and gave of myself, I still felt like an empty glass. It was like I was seeking for water from other empty glasses that couldn't pour into me what I was looking for. And so this continual cycle in my life really brought me to a point of like, you know, God, if you're real, and I knew him to be, but if you're real, and if you are who you say you are in the scriptures, if you can and you do bring new life, if you do bring change, do that in me. Like it was, no one forced me into the church and said, oh, you need to get your life together. Like I was crying out for something more. And I remember being drunken in a gay nightclub. This was probably the first time I heard the voice of God speak to me. And I heard a voice say, I have so much better in store for you. And mind you, I'm drunk. Maybe I was, you know, I thought maybe I'm just hearing things because I'm so hot, you know, drunk right now. And on the ride home from the club, about 6 a.m. as the, you know, sun was rising in the sky, I glanced out the window of my friend's backseat, the backseat of his car, and I heard the voice speak to me again. And it said, I have so much better in store for you. And so just from there, like God just began to like pursue my heart. Like I had these concepts about God that like, again, because I was a gay man, that he hated me, but he showed me, I don't hate you, I love you. Like I sent my son Jesus to die for you so we can have a relationship. So the rhetoric that I heard about, you know, people, you know, in the gay community was not representing God's heart at all. And so God was demonstrating his love for me, and it was his love that led me into a life-changing experience on October 18th of 2009. I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and that was the turning point for me, where I had to trust God that the life that he was offering me was greater than the life that I had created for myself, the identity I had created myself for the 6 years that I identified as a gay man. And it felt like a separation anxiety, like I was leaving literally the person that I had become and pursuing new life when I had no concept of what new life looked like. All I knew was Jesus was telling me, I have better for you. You know, I can give you joy. You don't have to take your life. You don't have to be depressed. And so just walking on that journey, and I've been walking on this journey with him now going on 13 years. I don't have the time in our conversation to tell you the many ways in which he like changed my life. But I think there's this misconception, touching on what you mentioned about the goal not being like being straight, the goal being holy. Like I think a lot of times in church, we think when it comes to gay people that the answer is making them get married to a woman that'll fix them.
That'll fix them, right.
Or the goal is to change your sexual desire to that of a woman. Now, those things can happen, but the goal of a relationship, the goal of faith in God is not to make a person straight, because there are a lot of straight people who live some jacked up lives.
Yes, they do. Come on, now. Yes, they do.
True. Your straightness doesn't make you holy. Your straightness doesn't make you superior to a gay person.
Right.
But the goal, the objective is a relationship with Jesus. He rights all the wrongs in our lives. And I found that to be true in my life. And I find that to be, that he's to continually to be a truth. And so now being married to a woman and having a child, I never thought that I would be married to a woman. I wanted marriage. I wanted to be married to a woman, but I the reality was that I was a gay man and I wasn't attracted to women. But
So
God brought about a change.
Let's jump forward to that. So you
Okay.
are sitting in, I believe, choir rehearsal or Bible study. You hear a young lady's voice behind you. She was talking and she was very articulate and everything of what she was saying. You turn around, you see that, oh, I've studied you, believe me. You turn around, you want to see who this woman is, and you're like, wow, I love the way she speaks, I love the way she looks and everything. And God spoke to you then. It's like, okay, this is your wife. But he also spoke to her when y'all were teenagers.
Yes.
And God told her, you're going to marry this man. And she was like, no, he's gay. And then she also had struggled. I can't tell you all the information. Y'all got to get the book, because that's who he says he is. But she also was struggling with her sexuality at the time as well. So when you guys get together now and discuss this, how do you, again, because people are like, okay, well, that's what it is. She's this, he's that, and they're still out there playing around with other people. So how do you, and we're not here to try to change people's minds, and I want people to live their lives of who they are. Be happy, but know that God is a miracle worker. God can do so many things in your life, regardless of what it is. So when people hear the story, they still are going to have their judgments. How do you still overcome that?
Sure. And that's a really good question. And for a long time, I've had to, and this was before marriage, people were already skeptical about me. When I came in, like, out of the gay life, I was a very effeminate man, and people made judgments about me and assumptions. Well, if you're supposed to be, saved now, then, why do you still come across, effeminately? But just because you're saved, it doesn't mean it changes the way that you walk or talk or carry yourself.
Right.
And so, I had to, it was a process of relearning my identity and discovering who I am. And that took years to come into that. And people's opinions weighed a lot on me. Like, I took on the burden of people's skepticism, but I had to learn that their skepticism was not a reflection of me. Their skepticism was a reflection of their doubt in God. He's the one that says he changes. Right. So you doubting me doesn't really change anything about my life, but it does say that perhaps we as people don't believe. We don't believe that God is who he says he is, or can do the things that he can do. And so I've had to deflect that and allow it to be directed to the one that they have complaint with, because he's the one that says he brings the change. So I'm just a byproduct of his miracle working power.
Okay,
so
byproduct.
That's how I respond to that.
Let me ask you this, and because again, these are questions that people have on their minds.
Sure.
The objective isn't being straight, the objective is being holy. So living a gay lifestyle now, you have a beautiful wife, beautiful child. Is it hard at times to see a man and not have thoughts of thinking, not sexual thoughts, but to say, oh, wow, he's good looking? And not to say that we as men can't do that, but see it as living a gay lifestyle. Now that you think, oh, he's nice looking, they'll automatically think, see, I knew he was still gay. I knew he was, so is there times that you may think, not sexual thoughts, but thinking, oh, wow, they walk by and you may take a look to go on about your business?
Sure. Honestly, that's the reality of the Christian experience. We don't become, our eyes don't become like closed to the attractiveness of the rest of God's creation. Like, I used to think that to acknowledge a man's attractiveness made me like, that was a signifier that I'm like gay, but no, like acknowledging the attractiveness of a man is healthy, it's normal, and it's actually like glorifying to the God that made him.
Right.
And so I can acknowledge the fact that this person looks good. Now, where I run into trouble is if I start lusting.
Right.
And again, the reality of this human experience is, although, we may be walking with Christ and living new life, we will never forget the experiences that we've had. Our body remembers those things. And so is the potential there to lust? Absolutely. But that's where the decision comes in. Like when we are in Christ and he's empowered us through his spirit, he helps us to say no to the things that we used to be a slave to. I remember when I couldn't say no.
Yes.
That second and that third look would get me in trouble.
Right.
But in walking this thing out over the 13 years, have I had sexual thoughts about men that I've had to like turn my thoughts off from? Yes.
Yeah.
And if every Christian has that experience, whether they experience sexual attraction to the opposite sex.
That's right.
It's the same experience.
The same experience.
But Christ gives us the ability to overcome and live victorious above the temptation.
Listen, Ron, we have ran out of time. I could talk to you on and on and on. So, we're going to have you back on the show. I really appreciate you coming on. And again, this is Real Talk for Real People. So I want to bring you back and so we can really talk some more. Ron, tell everybody where we can get the books and where everyone can find you.
Sure. So both books are on Amazon. The title again of the first one is my autobiography, Is God Who He Says He Is? The title of the most recent book is Echoes, Stories of Male Survivors Overcoming Sexual Trauma. My website is Ronald J. Mccray, which is spelled MCCRAY.com. Everything that you need to know to get in contact with me, including social media handles, are found there.
And you also have a single. Is it out or is it coming out?
My single is available. It's called Come Holy Spirit, and it's available on all music platforms. All music platforms.
So Come Holy Spirit, make sure that you do that. Also, just go to his website, www.ronaldjmccray.com, and get all the information that you need, the books, the music, everything about Ronald. Mr. Mccray, thank you once again. I truly appreciate you being transparent and opening up to us, to the world, and letting everybody know your story. And we just know that it's going to help one person. And if we know that we've helped one person, that we've helped a whole lot of people, because that will start trickling down. Your life is worth living, as he said. So please make sure that you remember that. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for tuning in to Talking with 3D. I am your host, Derek Darrell Dixon. Have a great evening, and we will see you next week at Plushwork TV. Have a good one.
If somebody don't like you, that is their business. Beloved, if somebody don't like you, what you gonna do? If somebody don't like you, that is their business. Beloved, if somebody don't like you, and that's the whole song. And that's the whole song.
When you're feeling down and like your world's moving slow, just remember your race. It moves at your pace when marching towards your goals.